Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the channel. It is currently 5:04 a.m. East Coast time, Thursday, August 22nd. Football is back, preseason week 3, the week that usually the starters get to play, but it seems like a lot of head coaches are not going to play their starters and or will not let us know how long their starters are going to play. Now, usually it's the first half. Some teams even go into the third quarter, but a lot of coaches are saying, they're not playing at all, or they're going to play a quarter, or I'll let you know. So really, we're working with very limited data. More and more that the years go by, people are saying, yeah, you know what, the preseason kind of stinks. Why the hell are we playing our players in it? There's nothing up for grabs. These guys are veterans. Maybe we'll throw some rookies out there. So in terms of the Aaron Rodgers, the Patrick, all these guys, I don't think they should be playing at all. But again, the coaches will do what they want. We really don't have much data or news or information at all on what's going to pan out as of right now throughout the day today. Hopefully we get some more updates from some of the beat writers, but nothing as of now. Again, doing this really early. Started most of my analysis last night around 4 or 5 at night. So hoping that a lot of things haven't changed since then. Just highlighting over some things this morning. If so, definitely will be updating either in the YouTube comment or over on Patreon. So welcome to the channel if you're new here. My name is Sal Vetri. Tons of people are finding the channel through these preseason and really overall NFL videos. So if you can do me a favor and hit that subscribe button if you get any value from this video, it really helps me out. My goal was to hit 7,000 subscribers by the end of the month, and we're like 700 or so away with 9 days left. We've had already like 400 or 500 this month, so we get a big push. Really appreciate that. Putting in a ton of work and research takes a lot of time for this preseason stuff. So I really appreciate it. Down below, I have an NFL daily fantasy course. It is $50 off right now. $50 off of the normal $150 price point that will be the price point once the regular season starts. You can get that down below, as well as some Patreon exclusive content and free strategy guides are also down there. But enough with the housekeeping. That's all what's available here if you're new. If you do get any kind of value, hit the subscribe button. But let's get into it. We'll start with each position. I have interests. I'll be ranking these interests on Patreon later today in terms of my ranks and tiers and picks sort of deal. And really a ranking and tier style, not really picks, but it's going to be changing throughout the day depending on potential news. But Lamar Jackson will be an interest, not one of my main interests, but somewhat interesting because if they give him a half, he's been playing about 3 possessions or so, 1 quarter, or maybe a little bit more the first 2 preseason games. If they give him a half and he throws twice as much and he runs 5, 6, 7 times instead of his 2 or 3 that he's been running, yeah, Lamar Jackson is somebody that I'm going to have a lot of interest in. I expect 10 to 12 rush attempts per game in the regular season. You get a half out of him. That's going to be much more than really any other quarterback is going to be getting. And the rushing upside is huge. So not a ton of interest because, again, he could play a quarter again. We don't really know just yet. But if he does get that extended offensive possessions in the second quarter, I do have some interest. Matt Ryan. So you're going to have some starters coming out. We're still going to have some backup guys, some of the guys that were doing well in week 1 and week 2 that I have interest in. But Matt Ryan played 31 snaps last week. 31 snaps is a lot more than a ton of backups played last week. So I don't know if they used week 2 as the normal week 3 last week for him. I'm not really sure what was happening there. But if that kind of continues, even if he gets only 31 snaps again, yeah, I'm going to be all about that, especially with more and more starters getting on the field this week for Atlanta. Dwayne Haskins Jr., look, we played him last week. We had a ton of upside with him last week. He went out, performed well. There's probably still going to be no Colt McCoy, as he says he's still not 100%, and there's no timetable to when he'll be 100%. So it was really Haskins for the most part last week, Haskins and Case Keenum. And Haskins played 57% of the snaps, so decently to almost far majority percent of those snaps over Keenum. And Haskins has just looked better overall, at least from last week. Now, week 1, he threw 2 interceptions. Didn't look that great, but also when he wasn't throwing picks, he looked decent. Last week, stayed in the pocket, threw that touchdown pass that got a lot of attention on Twitter, ESPN. So Haskins seems like a guy that I do like, and against Atlanta, already a banged-up defense to begin with and not a good defense overall. He's the guy who's going to, out of the 3 active quarterbacks on this roster, only 3 because you are probably going to get no Colt McCoy, seems like a guy that's going to be, once again, on the field for 50-plus to 60% of the snaps. I do like that. I have Tom Brady in here. Look, Tom Brady usually, he didn't play week 2 last week. Usually he plays a good amount during the preseason of week 3. Usually he'll play a half or so. That's a lot of run for Tom Brady. So if you're going to give me Tom Brady for a half of a football game against backups for a quarter of that potentially, yeah, I'm going to get some of that. So keep an eye on this. If he is going to be active, like he was ruled out last week, he's probably not playing much. If he's active, there's a decent chance he plays the whole first half, and then he's not going to play week 4, and that's it. That's his practice. That's his live run. But the Patriots usually get a lot of joint practices, so you can get a lot of experience there. But again, historical data, most of the weeks, or most of his career in the past seasons, he's played week 3 almost a half of football. So maybe that happens again. Again, he's aging. Maybe it doesn't. I don't think he should be playing, but we'll see if we get any news on that front. Ryan Finley for Cincinnati has been playing fantastic. He's gone 33 of 44 in the preseason, 20 of 26 last week. Dalton was the closest to him last week. He had 26 pass attempts, was on the field for over 65% of the snaps. Dalton was the next closest, opened the game, played 9 or threw 9 passes on 2 drives, I believe. Maybe it was 3, but I think it was 2. So Ryan Finley, I do have interest in against the Giants, who, again, their primary secondary is going to be terrible this year, I imagine, and their secondary and third strings not going to be that great. Finley should be the second guy in behind Driscoll. If he's not, he'll be the third guy in, even better for him. Daniel Jones, I do have interest in for the Giants against Cincinnati. Jones has gone 16 of 19 in the preseason, 228 yards, 2 touchdowns through 2 games. He had 14 attempts last week. He was on the field for 32% of the snaps. I do like a lot of other guys more. Eli should probably get some extended run here, which actually helps Jones when he comes in the game. He'll be facing worse defenders overall. And I don't think, as I scroll down here, I don't think Alex Stanley and Kyle Loretta, they're going to have to take one of those guys as their third string quarterback, the Giants. Both have been playing pretty well. Jones is definitely on the team. Eli's clearly on the team. I mean, probably shouldn't be, but he's clearly on the team. I shouldn't give him that much credit. People slack on Eli way too much more, overhype how bad he is, in my opinion. But yeah, I think Jones is going to be a guy who they're going to kind of make a decision on that third and fourth string quarterback spot, and I think they already have. I think he gets more run against a better matchup, worse defenders. Josh Rosen, he's going to be coming in second after Ryan Fitzpatrick in this game. And again, preseason week 3, Fitzpatrick maybe finally sees a little over a quarter, but if that's the case, you're going to get Rosen coming in for 2+ quarters against even worse defenders. Instead of Rosen coming in at the start of the second, playing some of the third, he's now going to be coming in mid-second, playing all of the third, maybe even some of the fourth. Outside of that, maybe I have some maybes. Yeah, so some of my maybes drop to the bottom here. So if Brady is not going to play or he gets ruled out once again, Jared Stidham becomes one of the best plays on the overall slate. He went 14 of 19 last week, 193 yards and a touchdown. Hoyer only played like 20%, 25% of the snaps. Stidham played close to 70%. If Nick Foles is starting and they say anything about the run that he'll be getting, I have slight interest in Nick Foles, but really what it does there is it kind of increases the overall interest in some of the pass catchers, because for the most part, those quarterbacks out there have been terrible, but if Foles comes in, gives them some stability. And Mike Glennon, we were really high on Mike Glennon the last time they went out. They moved Nate Peterman above him in the order. Just awful, right? So Nate Peterman comes in. He stinks, right? Mike Glennon comes in third, and he had just a much better matchup. He ended up going 11 for 14, 175 yards and 2 touchdowns. If he comes in third again, he's going to be one of my biggest interests on the entire slate. Let's move over to running back. I'm not going to cover every single running back, every single wide receiver, every single tight end. We'll be here for an hour. So I say that every time, but seriously, this time, 6-game slate, it's going to be a lot. So just make sure to keep attention to Patreon, or just kind of read this stuff if you want. A couple of guys to keep an eye on. Look, Justice Hill for Baltimore looked really good last week, I believe, against the Packers. He has continued to look good and really turn a lot of heads in practice, kind of pushing guys now for that second string job there, maybe even already the third string guy. Justice Hill, probably the most talented guy on this Baltimore team in terms of preseason players. I have a lot of interest in him. Should get some extended run overall with some of the starters maybe, but also continue his secondary roles. I'm going to just jump around to some of these guys. Damian Harris last week, absolute monster. I mean, this guy was on the field for 50% of the snaps in week 2 after not playing in week 1. 14 carries for 80 yards and a touchdown. He was tackled at the 1-yard line, then he gets in, and 4 catches on 24 yards and 4 targets. So overall, 18 touches for over 100 yards and a touchdown. Look, I'm not going to say he repeats that. He probably becomes very highly owned, but at the same exact time, I also don't think a lot of things are going to change in terms of who they sit out. If Sony Michel plays, it's going to be very limited because he's been kind of working his way back from an injury. Same exact deal with Rex Burkhead. If James White plays, which he got scratched last week, I don't think that really hurts too much of a Damian Harris. And then, Damian Harris is already the next guy in line after that. I think they're going to continue to give him more run, see what they have in this Alabama running back, and he looked absolutely fantastic. I'm excited to kind of play him and see more of what he can do. Moving now down a little bit, Carolina. Well, a couple guys I have interest in Carolina. One of them is Reggie Bonifant, mainly because of the pass catching abilities for this guy. Back-to-back weeks of at least 3+ catches. Last week he had 4 catches for 32 yards and 5 targets. He also got some work on the ground. 3 rushes, 15 yards. So overall, 7 opportunities total last week, and he cashed it in for about 47 yards. So the upside's there. PPR-wise, the upside is there. If you look at it that way, he had about 9-10 fantasy points, and that's without a touchdown. So that's pretty stable in terms of a floor, and usually when any pass-catching running back, that's what you're going to get, a stable floor. Jordan Ellis for Cincinnati just looks like a very clear and I don't want to say obvious nice play this week. He's just been getting all the work. He's 18 of 63 on the ground and 10 of 63 in a touchdown this preseason. Last week, he had 5 for 19 in a touchdown, and he also had 6 targets. So Jordan Ellis for Cincinnati, look, Mixon and Gio, they played last week. They'll probably get one drive each, like 2 to 3 touches, 4 touches, even if the starters get extended run. Like, I don't think those guys are going to be playing the whole first half because they've been very, very cautious with the Mixon and a Bernard, guys who have been dealing with injuries in the past and also this offseason. So if Williams comes out and he had a touchdown week 1, bruised his ribs, he's still dealing with a little bit of an injury. Seems like he's better, but again, another guy they're not going to try and test even though it is week 3 of the preseason. So all of that said, even if the Mixon, the Gio, the Williams play the first half, give me all day Jordan Ellis in the second half, a guy who has now averaged 5 catches per game in each of the first 2 preseason games and over 12 touches per game. Approaching right now, he's had 28 touches in the first 2 weeks, and he's going to get secondary work. So I like that a very good amount. Jordan Ellis stands out. A couple other guys going down the depth chart. Look, Wayne Gallman's probably not going to play for the Giants. Saquon definitely shouldn't play and likely doesn't play. So some of the guys that are going to stand out, the Giants running back spots were kind of all split down the middle. 34% of the snaps went to Paul Perkins, 34% of the snaps went to Perkins, 34 overall snaps, which is right around 30, went to Rod Smith, and then you had John Hillman getting 32% of the snaps. Now, John Hillman was the guy who saw the most overall usage, 16 carries, 1 catch, overall 17 touches for 59 yards and a touchdown. Don't let that get too, don't look into that too much. Now, he came in kind of the second half against much worse players, and Cincinnati already stinks against the run. It's going to be much worse once you get to the third string. So I do like John Hillman, but I just want to point out that he had similar kind of opportunities in terms of snaps, how long he was on the field, as Rod Smith and Paul Perkins last week. He just ended up being the guy who got the most work. Paul Perkins had 8 touches and Rod Smith had 12 compared to Hillman's 17. So that can very easily tilt one way or the other depending on who's just the game flow and how they want to run it. So I'm not going to look into that too much. I get it. He had the most overall opportunities, but that can switch very easily, kind of like we saw with Xavier Turner last week. Outside of that, Thomas Rawls for Jacksonville stands out a little bit. There's a couple of injuries in the Jacksonville backfield coming into this week. I doubt Fournette plays that much. Alfred Blue has already been ruled out, so they're down most likely if no Fournette plays, and if he does, it'll be 1 or 2 drives. They're down their top 2 running backs out there. Thomas Rawls had, I think, 10 touches overall, maybe 11 with he either had 1 or 2 catches, but he had 9 carries. So I expect 10 plus touches out of him. You're not going to find that many places. Miami's a pretty decent defense to attack on the ground, even in their first and second string, which I imagine you're going to probably get Rawls coming in against the starters or the second unit, which isn't great for him, but the opportunities will be there. Now you can see there's a lot more guys I didn't talk about here. You had Ito Smith playing 22 snaps last week for Atlanta, 3 catches, 3 targets. Overall, the usage isn't there, but I imagine they give him more this week. Devonta Freeman, if he plays at all, it should be 1 drive. I hope he doesn't play. Very injury prone so far. Quadre Olson for Atlanta, he'd be a guy coming in the second half. He had 24 snaps last week, 11 opportunities, 2 targets, didn't catch one, but he had 9 rushes for 44 yards. There's upside there. But yeah, the main guys that I think stand out are going to be Jordan Ellis for Cincinnati, going to be Damian Harris for New England after what he did last week. Justice Hill for Baltimore has a ton of upside. If they just give him some more opportunities, he's on the field a lot. A ton of upside there. The Giants are kind of like a roulette wheel at that point. Paul Perkins, Rod Smith, and John Hillman all kind of fall together. And they all really, for the most part, had decent opportunities. Hillman just broke away, but I don't think that sustains. I'll touch on Miles Sanders. People are going to say, oh, Sal, why don't you like Miles Sanders as much? Look, even though it's week 3 and they probably get more snaps, there's just 5 or 6 Eagles running backs out there. Like last week, he had 5 carries for 31 yards, but he was only on the field for 11 snaps, 14%. There's so many guys in that Eagles backfield. Josh Adams, let's look at it all. Smallwood had 3 carries last week. We had Sanders with 5. Boston Scott had 7. Donnell Pumphrey had 5. Yeah, Josh Adams, who was on the field for the most percentage of the snaps as a running back, had 5. It's just all spread out, and I don't think they're just going to go and give 15 carries to Miles Sanders in week 3. They still want to see what they have in all these other guys, like a Jordan Howard, who also had 4 carries last week. It's just all spread out. Nobody really broke away. It's not even like Miles Sanders' carries were the most. Like Boston Scott had 7, Pumphrey had 5, and Adams also had 5. Look, it's all too close for me. I know all the hype's around Sanders. I'm a Penn State guy, as you can see. I like him. I know he's talented. But in the preseason, I don't know how even in the regular season he breaks away. Like, they're still going to give so many carries to other players. What is he going to have? Lead the team with 12 carries? That doesn't do much for me. Lots of other things down here in terms of news. I believe I had some maybes. Yeah, Nick Brissetti, if you're going to get, look, he had 10 plus opportunities again last week, got in the end zone. I'm all in on Damian Harris in New England, but don't ignore Brissetti getting some run. Josh Jacobs is a maybe just because he has touchdown upside. If he plays, it'll probably be 2 drives, maybe a quarter, the rookie running back. It's mainly because he has touchdown upside, but I don't think you're going to get a ton of opportunities. Myles Gaskin for Miami is a guy who continues to see sort of a higher snap count after the first week. Didn't do much compared to week 1 last week in the passing game, but I do think he has a passing game upside here. There's so many wide receivers. Look at this. This week, 6 games. There's 23 guys that I wrote as a yes and like 5 as a maybe. This just shows you that there's so many opportunities. So J.J. Arcega-Whiteside for Philadelphia. He played on 34 snaps, 44% last week. Caught 2 balls for 20 yards on 7 targets. Now keep in mind, no Wentz, probably not playing the whole preseason. They just signed Josh McCown. So maybe now if McCown plays, they'll actually have a good quarterback, or at least a serviceable quarterback who can hit these big receivers. Arcega-Whiteside I like a lot. If McCown's actually going to play, those 7 targets should actually convert a little bit more. I imagine most of those were because just bad quarterback play. 51% of the snaps also in Philadelphia for Carlton Agudosi. I do like that. He had 4 targets, 2 for 14. Again, I wrote brutal QBs though, and with Josh McCown out there, hopefully that helps them. We talked about quickly, I just want to go back and actually make sure this was all right. Yeah, it was. We talked about Justice Hill on Baltimore being talented. The other guy who's standing out is Chris Moore. Now he has 100 yards receiving in 2 weeks. He had 4 catches for 54 yards and a touchdown last week against the Packers. I believe he's had 6 catches now total in the preseason. Looks decent. Miles Boykin, a guy that I know who kind of covers Baltimore, said to keep an eye out on Miles Boykin. Has not made much noise in the games, but they're going to give him some extended run, and he's been looking really good this week in practice. So take that for what it is. Washington, Kelvin Harmon, he had 2 targets, did nothing with his 2 targets. This is a guy who's a very sneaky type of play. I don't know how much upside there is, but he was on the field for 37 snaps, 70% of the plays. Darvin Kinsey Jr., I like him a lot, 49% of the plays last week. Didn't do much, but he's been kind of Haskins' guy in camp, and I imagine he gets a little bit more run. Tons of talent, maybe a bubble watch player. Keep an eye on that. Jacob Myers, he was a potential fade for me last week, but then I just couldn't go there that often. I don't know how you get away from Jacob Myers. He played on 78% of the snaps last week. Caught 6 catches, all 6 of his targets for 82 yards. The guy looks absolutely fantastic. Probably going to be the wide receiver 4 or 5 on this team, even with a Josh Gordon coming back. Jacob Myers, look, 78% of the snaps. I don't know how you get away from that in cash, maybe not even in tournaments. I have Curtis Samuel on here. Look, he had 3 targets last week, got some run, 1 catch for 13 yards. You're betting on the talent there. You're betting that he plays a quarter, maybe a quarter and a half, and he just burns a guy. But Curtis Samuel, probably one of the best overall regular season plays in terms of how he's going to be so undervalued week 1. Damian Willis has been looking good for Cincinnati. I have some interest there, but again, not a ton of interest in him, but he's been looking decent, getting more and more run, more and more targets. Benny Fowler has 2 touchdowns back-to-back weeks. Don't play Benny Fowler this week. I like Benny Fowler, but he's only been playing on 15 and 20% of the snaps. His touchdowns are coming on very limited snaps. That's not going to continue to withstand, in my opinion. The guy who is continuing to withstand, in my opinion, is going to be TJ Jones. 9 catches on 104 yards and 2 touchdowns. Last week, he's seen over 20% of the snaps in each of those weeks. But again, I still think he has a better upside than Benny Fowler. He's going to be going out there probably with a majority of Daniel Jones, and those backup quarterbacks for the Giants have been good. But I am a little bit worried of TJ Jones because I think his ownership is going to come up. And again, he's been seeing slightly higher snaps than a Benny Fowler. So he's getting a lot of his work in on limited snaps, which again, in terms of keeping touchdowns coming, that's not going to sustain. Preston Williams for Miami, I'm going right back to the well with him. He had 6 targets last week. I think he only caught 1 ball, but he had the touchdown catch of the year. He kind of hit it into the air and then dove into the end zone and caught it. But I think he stepped out of bounds, so it got ruled back. This kid's going to be incredible. I want some Preston Williams. Trey McBride, he did well last week, 4 catches for 47 yards. He was one of our top plays on whatever slate that they were on Friday or Saturday. He's continuing just to get a ton of snaps here. A lot of the starters for Jacksonville they haven't been playing. They're already ruling out loads of starters, Jacksonville. 9 starters already been ruled out and more to come apparently. I like Trey McBride regardless. I also like Chris Conley from Jacksonville if indeed the starters do play. Has had a ton of connections with Nick Foles. If they play a quarter or so, even a quarter and a half, Chris Conley is going to be a very big interest for me. Jake Kumru for the Packers. He's a Packer legend in preseason. 3 catches, 52 yards on 5 targets. He's going to get run with the ones if Rodgers plays in those guys, but he'll also kind of filter into the second and even third quarter. He's just going to be that type of extended guy who's already kind of maybe on the team, maybe not going to be a scout player, but he's going to get so much extra run. Hunter Renfrow finally got some more run last week after not playing week 1, I believe, or he played week 1 and didn't do much. 2 catches on 2 targets for 26 yards. I'm hoping they let Hunter Renfrow play a whole quarter or a whole half. If he does, I'm going to get lots and lots of Hunter Renfrow. I just love what I'm seeing out of this kid right now. Let Antonio Brown not come back. He's going to be fantastic. And then the maybes, we have so many maybes probably. Oh, only 4 maybes. There you go. So Chris Conley was a maybe. Geronimo Allison's a maybe in terms of just what you're going to be getting to elsewhere at the wide receiver position. 2 catches for 29 yards. On no touchdowns on 3 targets. So what I want to kind of point out is that you're going to have a lot of wide receivers, and on fantasy draft, if you see in the corner, they have wide receivers and running backs overall. So I'd be very interested in and you can sign up fantasy draft rate free week 1. It looks incredible, their tournament. 10% to first, 26% to the top 10. So you can get to a lot. You can get to 2 flexes over there. Only have to play 2 wide receivers. So if you're liking a lot of running backs this week, and I do like a decent amount, 3 to 4, you can play 4 running backs. If you're liking a lot of wide receivers, you can go 4 wide receivers. Now, I think the running backs are where you're probably going to find your most opportunity, but the wide receivers, you're going to find just the most upside in that opportunity, right? Deep touchdown pass, whatever it might be. So Jacoby Myers, if you want to get him in with a Preston Williams and a bunch of other guys, it makes more sense if you want to go heavy at one position to kind of get that money down on fantasy draft. They have a $20K free roll for Thursday, so you guys should check that out as well. And that's really it. Gunnar Olszewski for New England. He played on 45 snaps last week. That's a lot, but he really didn't do much in back-to-back weeks in terms of the receiving game. Let's get into tight ends. There's so much to cover for this week. There's so many things going on. I love it. Tight ends, nobody really standing out too much. Robert Tonyan for Green Bay stands out a little bit. He had 5 targets last week, 3 catches for 17 yards. They continue to up his snaps. I believe it's going to continue to happen. I think he was a rookie last year, and now they really want to kind of get more use out of him, getting a lot of buzz in preseason. Darren Waller actually ended up playing last week, caught a ball for 2 yards. They should continue to up his snaps. I'm excited about Darren Waller. He's getting a ton of hype out there. They're saying that he could be one of the best tight ends in the league for fantasy. Not that hard when there's like 3 to 4 decent one or good ones, and then everybody else is decent to bad. So Darren Waller, keep an eye on him against the Packers. See if there's any news on him getting more run. That would be very, very helpful. A couple other guys. Jason Van Lan for Carolina. 1 catch on 2 targets, no touchdowns. 3 targets, but the big thing is 1 catch on 3 targets for 2 yards. That's what I meant. No touchdowns. The big thing is he has touchdown upside around the red zone, and he did play on 36% of the snaps. So an interesting guy who could be a sleeper. Austin Hooper, look, he's a guy who's a starter. He played on a decent amount of snaps. 28 snaps last week for Austin Hooper. We already talked about Matt Ryan playing a ton of snaps. So 3 catches, 20 yards, 3 targets. What you're looking for out of Austin Hooper is maybe he plays another quarter and a half or so, and he's a good tight end, better than the far majority of the ones on this slate. And if he's going to get that sort of run, 28 snaps, or more, I'm going to be getting to him. Nick Boyle for Baltimore. No real interest in these guys at all for that most part. So many people like Mark Andrews. You're wrong. Mark Andrews is going to play 55% of the snaps like he did last year during the regular season. And there's just no upside there for a tight end playing 55% of the snaps in an offense that probably won't be one of the best passing offenses. So right now this week, Robert Tonyan, Darren Waller, you can always get to the starting tight ends, those premier ones who play a quarter and a half. That's kind of what I'm looking at. Not a premier one in Austin Hooper, but a guy who's a starter, going to be getting his targets. And if he finds the end zone, he has more upside in terms of touchdowns and overall targets and usage than any of these other tight ends, in my opinion, just skill level-wise. Waller, Robert Tonyan also stand out. And then everybody else kind of just meshes together. Will Tye for Philadelphia. No Goddard for the whole preseason. There's probably going to be no Ertz. Even if he plays, it won't be much. So Will Tye, 50% of the snaps. He had 3 catches on 34 yards. That actually seems sustainable. I'm playing 50% of the snaps. So he's another guy who sort of stands out. 2 maybes is Dadaeum Graham for Atlanta. He had 4 catches for 55 yards last week on 5 targets. 2 catches on 2 targets for 14 yards the week before, and then he had 31 snaps last week, which is pretty good. James O'Shaughnessy also seeing a ton of snaps so far for Jacksonville in the preseason. Seems like a nice potential regular season type play during week to week for the cheap. So that's where I'm at right now. That was a lot, but hopefully this video helps. This is the 6-game slate. We'll have preseason coverage throughout the rest of the weekend, and then week 4 we're going to try to get some videos out. So hit that subscribe button if you can. Check out Fantasy Draft, link down below. Great free roll, $20,000 free roll, just going out in the form of tons and tons of tickets on that site. So you can check out that at FantasyDraft.com. It's linked down below. You can check out my Patreon, the NFL course. My name's Sal. You already know that. Peace out, gang.